All right, welcome to the Journey to Freedom podcast. This is Dr. B. I am your host today. I am more than excited today to have a conversation with Mr. Reginald Martin. We get to talk before the show, and sometimes, we call it the green room. And, in the green room, you kind of, make sure that everybody's on the same page and you're, going to talk about the same things. And sometimes in the green room, I'll be there for a minute. We got it down, boom, we're ready to go. Sometimes I lose myself because the guest is so interesting that I want to just start asking them questions right away and forget to hit the record button. And so we're going to repeat some of it because in this case, it was one of those times we started talking about where he lives. We started talking about people we know. We started talking about stuff that he's doing, how he's changing the world, all these wonderful things. And then I'm like, oh, this should have probably all been recorded. So you have a treat. I can promise you that today because we're going to have some fun just talking about life. We're going to talk about, he talks about something, and his life is based on what he calls Kometa Physics. I'm not saying he calls it that. I'm just saying he told me that's what it's called. And I had to get a little clarification because I guess when the Ka part is about the Egyptian, and he's talking about, well, I'll let him tell you all about it because when I think about metaphysics and I think about spirituality and where we're at and where I believe I'm at in my I guess my walk and my vision, and we begin to start talking about what does it mean to be spiritual versus being religious, and when I look back at world religions, there has been a lot of, if I just want to say the word, evil that has been done in the name of religion. And that's from some probably the biggest religious organizations that exist today. And so we're going to really talk about, and we're going to dive deep into, some of these subjects that, some people sometimes are just afraid to even talk about. And so, well, what if my mom hears this, or what if my dad hears this, or I was brought up this way, and now I'm thinking a little bit different, but I still want people to love me. And if I start talking like this, they might not love me no more. And so I hope we don't go there today. I hope we get to spend a whole bunch of really good quality time, which I know we will, on just that aspect of our life, which is spirituality. But I also want to just, I want to talk about identity. I want to talk about what does it mean. He's from Dallas, Texas, and he grew up in Dallas, Texas. So here's what I can promise you. I have a cousin and friends and all kinds of people that are part of the heart of Dallas. The Dallas of 2025 is not the Dallas of 1983 when I first got to go on K104 with my cousin and talk about the weather and that kind of stuff. And so, my cousin I was graduating high school in 1983, and I got to come out for the summer. I don't know if I just graduated before. And so I stayed with my cousin for a couple weeks as we were trying to, maybe it was right before because I was trying to make sure what college I was going to. He wanted me to go to SMU. And so I didn't end up going there. I went to school in California. But we just got to hang out. And so I was just in Dallas about 4 weeks ago, and it's not the same Dallas. I think since I've been there in 1983, and I go often, they've built like 5,000 bridges. Like you're on the freeway and everywhere you go is a bridge on top of a bridge on top of a bridge. I'm like, oh my gosh. But how fun it is. And so, Reginald, I want you to go ahead. Do you like to be, or rather me call you Reggie, or you go by Reginald, or how does that?
Reginald is good, so I'm good with
Okay.
Reginald.
So
Yeah.
I want Reginald to tell his story because one of the things that I love about this podcast and I love about the time that we spend together in it is we get to know who the person is way more so than we get to know what they do. And if you know the person and you kind of relate, he tells a story. Oh yeah, that was how it was for me back in the day or whatever it was. Then it's a lot easier when he says, "This is what I do," to go, "Oh, I get it." I understand. I talked to the guy who's an attorney, and he started out, just in the suit and ready to go. And, he's a criminal attorney and he's getting all these people out. Like, I can never do that. And then he talks about like running barefoot in the out in the desert, and or not in the desert, on the farm, and somebody had to come off the streets and get him, and because he was messing up and tearing up, and like, oh yeah, you was normal just like us. Y'all refined now, but you was normal. So go ahead and tell your story, and then we'll just chop it up after that. Thank you for being on. Thank you for taking the time and being the willingness to be on the show today. I sure appreciate it.
Hey, you bet, Dr. B. I'm so excited to be here. And it was so cool to find out about those connections that we have,
Mhm.
you and your cousin. And I grew up listening to your cousin on the radio. So when you were talking about being out here in the 80s, and I was listening to him in the 70s, so we have that in common. But so what I'll do is I'll just talk about my story in the context of what I do. So how I discovered the things that I discovered, because what I do is actually what I've lived, and I share those experiences and I share those ideas with others. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. And basically, it started with me when we talked about spirituality and stuff like that. And let me tell you, Dr. B, I'm not one of those that's afraid to talk. So with whatever we want to go into, I talk about it. I've lived so many years. If a person don't like me because they don't agree with me, that's just the way it is. But I
Oh, good.
love everybody.
Good, good.
So it's I you don't have to agree with me for you to like me, because it's just normal for us to have different perspectives and different experiences of life.
I
So
love it. Love it.
for me, it really started in just talking about spirituality, because for one, I live by three principles, and we talked about this a little bit earlier. But one is that we are the creators of our reality. Two, we are gods and goddesses in training. That's what we're here on the earth plane to do, is to learn that we are creators. And three, life is feedback, not a curse. Okay, so that right there takes us away. And I grew up Christian, so I understand that was the foundation of what I lived. But I started asking questions very early. So 15 years old, I just remember talking to my mother, and I asked her, a question that I had on my mind. I said, Mom, if somebody who's Jewish that doesn't believe, in Jesus as their savior, they do good all their lives. What I've been taught is that they're going to go to hell. But somebody that is, say, a mass murderer, on their deathbed, they can accept Jesus as their savior, and then they'll go to heaven. And I said, something just doesn't seem right about that. Is that true? Is that what will happen? Dr. B, she looked at me and said, yep. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. so so at that
Yeah,
point,
yeah, yeah.
I'm essentially traumatized at that point. I'm like, that just doesn't sound right. Something's not right about that. And so it started me really on a search. And what ended up happening was is that I was a pretty good basketball player in college, and I ended up getting a scholarship. But the summer before I went to college, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, probably one of my favorite books on the planet. Okay,
Yeah.
and he talked about all the books that he read, and he talked about all the studies. So it really ended up turning me into a lifelong learner. But I wanted to read everything he read. That's just how I admired him. So it started me on a search to about history, about spirituality. He talked about it from a Muslim perspective, and just the things that he found out about
Mhm.
Christianity. So he found, and it led me on the path to study the same stuff. Well, I
Yeah.
ended up going to a Southern Baptist Bible college. That's where I got my basketball scholarship to. And just things transpired there. I would not change the experience for anything. I enjoyed it, met a lot of good people there, but I ended up deciding that I was atheist the time I was there. And now I'm spiritual but not religious, if you wanted to put me into a category. But at that point, I still kept studying. I still kept, trying to find out, about it. But at that point, and I was atheist for in a way of just being rebellious. Okay, I'm not going to accept this idea of God. It can't be that way, you know. And for them, this was a college that was predominantly white, and and there was implied in the conversations was that you could be a good Christian, but only the best Christians are white. Now that was never said, okay, but
Mhm.
there was an implication in the conversations that you had. And for me, I was like, nah, I'm not going to accept that. You're not going to tell me that I'm inferior to you just because of my skin color, and I cannot accept your idea of God if that's what it believes. So there is no God, Um, but I still always had the want and the need for a connection to something bigger than me, and so that was kind of how I left that hanging there. Well, move forward a lot of years. I ended up getting married, and years down the road, and I still wanted my children to have some kind of spiritual grounding. So I ended up going back to church. Okay. And so I went back to the church. This was probably in the mid 90s. But I just couldn't stay because it just, by that time, I just had outgrown the idea that, of what they were teaching about God and what God was. And probably, I guess, the late 90s, probably a few more years later, I just totally left, Christianity altogether. Um, Move forward, I ended up getting a divorce and went through a lot of difficulties. But I was always studying, studying comparative religion. And then, I started noticing some similarities between religions, a lot of different things that seemed very similar. And so it just kind of stuck in my head that, there's got to be a common ground here that everybody is teaching from. Okay, that these religions came from, and so I started kind of searching for those ideas. Um, Around 2006, The Secret came out, and when The Secret
Okay.
came out, it was like, man, that was a whole new world for me because all of a sudden I got wind of metaphysics, and what metaphysics did was gave me ideas and a language that was away from the religious dogma to where I could explore the idea of a soul and spirituality outside the dogma. Okay.
Okay.
So when that happened, the secret actually confirmed things that I had already started to recognize in my life. Okay. So this is and one of the things that the secret taught was that thoughts become things. And okay, so
Hmm.
what's in your mind can become reality.
Yeah.
Well, the way that became a reality for me was through after my divorce, I was dating. Okay. And I started to notice a pattern in my relationships, with women. So I would, date different women, but there was a pattern that was common between them. Okay. So I started to think about because at first, after being divorced, you're bitter, or at least I was. Okay. And so I at first I was bitter about it, and I just figured it was something that was wrong with women. Okay. But then after a while, I had to wonder, okay, unless these women are getting together and conspiring, these women that do not know each other, never met each other, unless they're
Hmm.
getting together and conspiring to treat me a certain way, then the only common denominator is me.
Yeah.
If I'm the common denominator, then I am choosing a certain type of woman because of who I am. Okay.
Hmm.
So at that point, that meant to me that there was something inside me that was causing me to choose a certain type of woman that I was having these relationships with. So when the secret said thoughts become things, another part was that these thoughts are being projected from within you based on your vibrational essence. Okay, that's what those women represented. It gave me the language to say, okay, that was my vibrational essence is showing up as these women. They're showing me something. Okay,
Mhm.
so so that gave me a whole different frame to operate from. Then moving forward a little bit more, and I'm studying the secret, and I'm studying metaphysics, and the secret kind of intimated that the Greeks had the secret. Well, from books that I had read many years ago, one of them was Stolen Legacy by Asa Gilliard. The Greeks learned from ancient Egypt. So when
Mhm.
they said the Greeks had the secret, I was like, hmm. Well, I know that they learned from Egypt, and they really didn't have a philosophy until they came through Egypt. So it made me start to go back and study ancient Egypt. And I went to find things out about the law of attraction. Okay. But Dr. B, what I ended up discovering was not only the ideas about the law of attraction came from Egypt, but I also found the foundation of what my Christian religion was actually teaching, but had changed and distorted in some kind of way. But it was also the foundation of what most spiritual systems around the world were teaching. Okay. But I found out the ideas about the secret, and then I found out the foundation of my religion that I grew up with, that I had so many questions about, but nobody could ever seem to answer. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So in Egypt, brought together both those systems, and then I could actually ferret out what was changed, and then what was spirituality. What I came to the conclusion that I came to was, and this is where I teach with Kometa Physics, is that the difference between so there's a difference between spirituality and religion. Religion In religion, the idea is that that the God that you know is something that is external to you.
Mhm.
It is the idea of worshiping something external and trying to get a relationship to it, and hoping that external God will validate you, love you, whatever it needs to be. Okay. From a spiritual perspective, it is the idea that you are the essence of the creator that is experiencing life in human form. So you are essentially a spark of the creator experiencing itself as a human. Okay. And one of the ways that I like to explain that is just through an analogy to understand. And this is the ancient Kemetic and African um, spiritual system. So one of the questions I
Mhm.
had is what did ancient Africans believe before Christianity? So the Kemetic system answered those questions for me. But their idea of God is and I'm just putting it in modern day language, but their idea
Mhm.
was is that if God is an ocean, okay, so from a Kemetic perspective, God is not a human being. God is not like a human being. God is essentially a conscious force that we all can interact with equally. So if God is an ocean, then we are essentially drops in the ocean. Okay.
Okay.
Then if we are drops in the ocean, then that means the ocean is in every drop. So
Okay.
if that is the case, then the idea that Christianity taught us is that we were born sinful, wicked, and destined for hell if we didn't accept Jesus as our savior. Okay. So that was a different way of thinking than most of the ancient systems taught. That was Christianity changed something there. Okay. But what I saw in that was that it also created a way of thinking that ended up making us create a pattern of self-loathing, self-doubt, and really to hate ourselves. And what I saw was is and how I saw that was that in my communities growing up, I grew up in poverty. I knew a lot of communities where people that looked like me lived in poverty. Okay.
Mhm.
So why was that? Because I knew that there was money in our community. I knew that there was educated people in our community. But why didn't people build self-sustaining, economically self-sustaining communities? From an African American perspective, and a lot of times in the African diaspora around the world.
Mhm.
Well, one of the things that the book, the autobiography of Malcolm X, one of the lines that stuck out with me, that stayed with me for a long time, was he said the two men can go to Harvard and get a degree. One can be a white man and one can be a black man. The white man will go and start a business. Then the black man will go and get a job from him. Dr. B, that stuck with me because it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what's the difference? Why is that? Why didn't that black man think that he could start a business too? And what it came down to me was is that I felt like on Sundays that many of us ingested the idea that we were broken, that we were born sinners, and that we were wicked. And that undermines any level of confidence that you have in yourself and your ability to build anything. People who believe they're broken cannot build. Okay. But from a Kemetic perspective, from the ancient African perspective, we are not broken. We're not born sinners. We are born divine. And because we are a divine spark, we have the ability to create just like the Creator does. And even biblically, it says we are made in the image of God, but the image is not physical.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of us take that literal as the image of God is something that we look like God. That's not what it's about, because the idea of God is in everything, whether it's a rock or a person. The idea of God is everything is imbued with this essence. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's the foundation that I built Cometicism from. And the way that I looked at it too was that I wanted to reach people, so it is African spirituality, but it is for humanity. That's one of the ways I look at it. But I knew that as far as reaching my people and my community, there was no way that I was going to be able to do that without going through the Bible first, because people were going to have to feel safe about
Mhm.
what because I mean, you're talking about an existential crisis if you don't believe a certain way, that your eternal life is in peril. you know
Yeah. Yeah.
but but what I did was I ended up finding that common foundation of spirituality, and realized that a lot of the ways that we were taught the Bible, we were taught an exoteric perspective of the Bible, but it is actually written in esoteric language. So there's an esoteric or hidden knowledge built written underneath the stories. We get locked in on the stories, but there's another layer beneath the stories is actually what the real message is. So that's the foundation that Cometicism is built on. And I can stop there, but I can keep going. But that's essentially it, is that we are gods and goddesses in training, and that life is feedback. So that's a foundational principle that I built, and that stuff and those principles are basically ancient African spirituality, and that's where these ideas came from. I'm updating them with an updated language and processes and tools that we use to build from within. I'm sorry, Dr. B. I can barely. Dr. B.
Hello. I don't know
I can
if
hear you
he's
saying
able
something,
to.
but you're fading in and out. I'm sorry.
I think we're back. Can you hear me?
I can hear
Can
you.
you hear me? Okay, cool. Well, we'll just edit that part out. How's that
Yeah, yeah,
sound?
yeah, yeah. No
So
problem.
we're still on and we're going, and I can hear you perfectly well, and I'm not sure what's going on with our internet here. That I don't know if we have a storm or something that's just kind of not liking us.
Yeah,
But if you
I
can hear
don't
me
know if
now,
it's
we'll
on
just
my
keep going.
end. Yeah, I don't know if
Okay.
it's on my
Are you
end
okay hearing
because.
me now, though?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So one of the questions that because it's so embedded into our culture, it's so embedded into the belief system of who we are. I watched something like The Secret back in 2006. I said these are some really cool things, but how do I fit that in to my own belief system so it all makes sense? And I know that's kind of what you were doing as well. So how did you, without throwing out what you'd learned and been part of you, still begin to accept maybe a new way of thinking? Because I can't imagine it was like you just turn one off and turn the other on. There had to be some overlap. Maybe kind of talk
Oh,
about that a little bit.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because you growing up Christian, we're taught a certain way, we're taught a certain frame, of in way of thinking, and that's the way I look at it, and I separate it from, really the idea of being a born sinner to an idea of being born divine. So those are two different frames and two different perspectives. So it's a different two different paradigms of thinking. So it took, so I would say was in now they call it deconstruction, where you start to deconstruct your old beliefs, through Christianity. That wasn't anywhere around, when I was going through what I was going through. But I stayed in deconstruction mode for probably 20 years. Okay. And what that means is that I had knowledge that I couldn't go back to the old beliefs in the old beliefs that I had as a Christian, but I didn't have enough knowledge or in anything else that I could move forward with. So I couldn't reconstruct, okay, until I found the Kemetic stuff. So what that helped me do was where I was basically in a mental limbo in a sense. The Kemetic teachings helped me to understand the idea of the KRST, what the Christ is. Okay, so the KRST or Christ existed 10,000 years before Christianity was ever even thought about. Okay, and so I was able to recognize really the foundational ideas, because the idea of the Christ is something that is in most spiritual systems around the world. Okay, so in that sense, Christianity became the outlier. And what I figured out is that I just put it in a simple way to grasp this idea, is that what Christianity claimed was new was not true, and what was true was not new. Okay, so that's how I had to. That transition for me was really finding out what these ancient spiritual ideas were, devoid of the dogma. So that's why I had to move from dogma to just more of a position of I'm developing it's my internal divinity, or my internal really just self-development is really what it was. I would say the ancient teachings were more about self-development and our inner journey than trying to placate something outside of ourselves. I hope I answered your question.
Oh yeah, absolutely, you did. As I'm thinking through, or I've had conversations with people and trying to understand the Creator or God. How
Hmm.
do you? Because some people have said no, there is no God. We are the gods, and other people say, well, we do have a Creator, but we are. I mean, kind of that relationship between the Creator and us. Maybe help me understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, and from a Kemetic perspective, growing up, we were taught that God is this human-like individual. So the idea and this is through the Greeks and the Romans, they actually humanized the idea of God. Okay. But the ancient Africans' idea of God was they didn't humanize it, it was anthropomorphized. And the difference is that from the ancient Africans didn't see God as like a human. What they did is they wanted us to understand how the metaphysical world became physical. So when they anthropomorphized, they took a natural aspect of us and said that this is what this function of the universe is like. Okay. So
Okay.
when they did that, they weren't looking at saying that God was a human. They were trying to tell us what this particular function of the universe was. And I guess one of the better ways that I can explain it is really to take the story of Jesus and how just take one of the miracles of Jesus and put it into context of the Kemetic idea of it, how it relates to life, and then the symbolic idea. Okay.
Okay.
So let's just start with life. Okay. And you tell me if this has ever happened to you, Dr. B, that you have ever went through something where you were like in in emotional turmoil, that you had some difficulties. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, so I'm asking you this, but I know it's just rhetorical. So,
Yes,
for your audience.
absolutely.
So, as
Yes.
entrepreneurs, we're going to go through some difficult times where we question everything. We're in fear. We're feeling all of this stuff. So our emotions are all over the place. Okay,
Mhm.
but then at some point, you get through whatever the emotional turmoil was. Things settle down, and you go on about living life and doing what you're supposed to do. So you reconcile whatever you were dealing with emotionally. Okay. So that is a natural function. So you have been through that. I'm 100% positive, because I don't think we can get out of life without that happening. So, as human
Yeah,
beings.
no, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, that uh human experience is something that everybody has gone through since we had humans on the planet. Okay? The ancients knew
Mhm.
that as well. So what they did is they created frameworks, and this is what a lot of the ancient teachings is doing, is they're really giving us these simple frameworks to tell us to help initiates understand this is what's going to happen, you know?
Mhm.
So but when you went through your difficult time, did you ever have a moment where you went, "Oh, I get it now. I understand. Okay, now this is what I need to do. I'll proceed."
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So
absolutely.
that's something that a lot of us go through.
Mhm.
Well,
Absolutely.
so what I just explained was the symbolic representation of the miracle of Jesus walking on water. So
Okay.
Jesus, as an anthropomorphized symbol, and I don't mean to offend people. I'm just taking it back to the ancient teachings, the ancient African teachings where it came from. Okay. But Jesus is basically the moment of enlightenment, that aha moment. Ah, I get it. Okay. And then it brings enlightenment or awakening to the person. So the idea that first the waters were turbulent, and symbolically,
Mhm.
turbulent water can stand for emotions. Okay, that aha moment is when you rise above your emotions and you're no longer operating in fear anymore. You're operating in, okay, well, this is what I need to do to get things done, and this is what I need to do to complete the task of whatever it is. At that moment, you're walking on the water. Okay, you're walking above, you are operating above the level of the turbulent emotions. They're not there anymore. In that
Mhm.
moment, you become peaceful, you become at peace, you become balanced. In that moment, you become the Christ, the KRST. Okay, so that's how I would take a person from understanding that, from a dogmatic perspective, we were supposed to believe in the idea of the miracle, and we're supposed to worship the miracle. But in reality, it was a framework to tell us just things that we go through. Okay, so that's how that's the way that I would characterize the idea of us being a god, is that we have the ability to create
Mhm.
in our reality. But the deal is that we are all in training, in a sense, because Earth is a school, and we're learning of our ability to create. And part of that is learning and going through the difficulties of life to where you can calm the storms when they come. But if
Mhm.
you believe that your power is somehow outside of you, a lot of times you don't calm the storm. And I can tell you that anybody that has ever calmed that storm recognize the power within themselves. Now they can attribute it to whoever and whatever, but at
Uh-huh.
some point they have to recognize it as them having the ability to take care of whatever they need to take care of to solve the problem.
Gotcha. So, uh, and I'm tracking with you. I think I guess I'm struggling struggling a little bit because when I think of the symbolicness, and I believe in what you're saying in this, symbolically we can get there, and we are. I believe God created us to create. Or,
Hmm.
but so are we saying that the story of Jesus didn't happen, or that like creation is more like what evolution subscribes to, or did the creator actually create it and we're like, I think you said something about like we're training to be able to be better creators and that kind of stuff. How did all this stuff happen, that the Bible, to me, that you just have to have faith and believe if you're going to believe that it happened that way, because it doesn't make, hardly makes sense in some aspects of it if you don't, believe that God just did it and 7 days later it was there, or Jesus was here and he performed those miracles, you know because we weren't there to watch it or see it, or there, but we believe in miracles.
Hmm.
So did all these things happen, and then, or they're just symbolic of stuff?
So now we're getting into theology, and
Mm.
I want to be careful here because I don't want to disrespect your beliefs and your theology. Okay,
Okay.
I'm going to respect where you are. Okay, so I'm so uh, if we're going to talk about the science of it, I can say that the from a the knowledge that I have and that I've researched is that the Bible has and the stories are about ancient frameworks. It's not a historical document, but
Okay.
again, that's my understanding. That's where I've studied a lot of stuff and understand that I once believed the theology as well. You know, so it's just different. But what I noticed that's happening, Dr. B, is that in the last few years, a lot of people are starting to walk away from the dogmatic beliefs. Okay, people are starting to the pews are dwindling in a lot of instances. Okay,
Mhm.
but people are not wanting to leave the idea that there is something bigger than them, that there is a God. Okay, that there is something that they are connected to that's bigger than them. They want to get away from the dogmatic systems, the dogmatic beliefs. What Kometa Physics allows people to do is to examine these ideas beyond the dogma, and
Okay.
that's where I want to go. Because I can get or we can get bogged down in you believe this or you have faith in this, but you have the right and you don't have to explain your faith to me, or you don't have to justify your faith to me. Okay, that's the way I look at that. It if that's where you are with that, then I respect that.
Gotcha. Okay. And that makes sense, and I'm tracking with you there. It just there's so many questions that are in that. Let me talk about you. So you've done a really good job of explaining where you were at and then where you have come to. How do you now, as Reginald Martin in Dallas, Texas, interact in life, um, with other folks and still be able to be an entrepreneur and have a career and phase these ideas in, and how have they helped you to move forward in your life in ways that you probably couldn't even imagine before
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Great question. Great question. Because for me, again, these beliefs is one that I'm a creator of my reality.
Okay.
So that foundational belief has pulled me through so much because Dr. B, I've had my ups and downs. I've lost everything I had 3 times, you know,
Yeah.
uh, on the journey of an entrepreneur. So for me, I could have easily, given up or, said, hey, this just wasn't in the cards for me. But I also said that life is feedback. Okay. So the way that I look at that is it comes from the ancient idea of Ma'at, and that life is reciprocal. I don't know if you've heard the concept of as within, so without, as above, so below. So that ancient concept is actually connected to the idea of Ma'at, that our life is a projection from within us. So if we want to make a change, if there's something in life that we don't like, then we can change our beliefs. Okay, so our beliefs are being projected as life. That's what's being reflected back to us. So life is a mirror, okay, of our inner essence. So for me as an entrepreneur, when I lost everything, believe me, I was down. You know, I there was days I questioned whether I wanted to even be here anymore.
Hmm.
That's how deep it got. Because I consider myself a successful person, and most of us that are successful, our success is based on our will and our hard work.
Hmm.
Well, the second time I lost everything, I was working hard. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, and things still didn't work out. I was like, I don't have anything else left now. you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so at that point, uh, you know, my old beliefs would have said, is am I cursed? You know, does God not want me to have this? You know, I would have went down that road. But my beliefs from a Kemetic perspective is that I am the creator, and what I have to do is recognize what life is showing me, and then figure out what I need to fix within me. Okay, what I need to recognize, and that is being mirrored back. There's some belief that is making me go through what I'm going through. The other part of that is connecting our emotional states and using emotions as our guidance system.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is that we I believe that we are souls having a human experience, and that's where I come from, the Kemetic perspective. That our souls are ground zero, and what our souls, we still experience our souls while we're in the physical. So connecting emotions to that means that when you're in joy, then you are aligned vibrationally with your soul, and when you are not in joy or feeling depressed, you're misaligned. Okay, so how does that work in real life? When I got depressed and down, I was there for a little while, maybe a day or two, but then I
Hmm.
recognized that I just need to find something that brought me joy, that would bring me out of that. Okay, and it wasn't even trying to bring me out of that. It was just more just finding, it was using my emotions as a tool that would sort of bring some light into my life rather than the darkness that I was in.
Hmm.
I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm answering your questions. If not, stop me and
Oh no, you absolutely are. I mean, this is perfect for uh, how you interact with life today. So this is good.
yeah, yeah, and so what I had to do, and this is again, this is just part of the tools that I teach with Kometa Physics. It's not trying to think positive, because that's only temporary. Okay,
Hmm.
it's a matter of being positive. And when I say being positive, that means that you find the silver lining in the cloud when you want to make a change, and you are in control of your emotions, so you can find something to give you that little sliver of joy that can start to bring you out. And what it did was it started
Hmm.
to, once I found that little sliver of joy, then I forgot I was depressed. I was just
Hmm.
enjoying myself, doing what I was doing. Okay. So, I might have been depressed for 2 days, but all of a sudden, for an hour doing what I was doing, I found some joy. Then an hour turned into 2 hours. Okay. And then once I found that little sliver of joy, I said, you know what? Some other people might want to know this, and I started doing something
Hmm.
else that I could teach somebody. That brought me a little bit more joy. So it ended up just doing something, being who I was, being who I am as a teacher, as an entrepreneur. It ended up lighting me from within, and I could bring myself out of that depressive state. Okay. Wasn't nobody else coming. I knew that that's what I had to do for myself, you know? So that's how
Gotcha.
these ideas end up interacting with life. And I've taught people, I've trained people, coached people, and they have found that it has worked as well. That it is just so these are not like just theoretical, kumbaya ideas that I've come up with. This is how life works. This is a tool, a lot of
Hmm.
times tools and processes that I know works.
Wow, that's so cool. So how today? I mean, we got about 10 minutes left in our conversation. So how are you helping others? When I think about living in purpose and living the way that I was put on this earth to do, or how do I do that? And you're helping a lot of people understand themselves and what they do. How do you go about that through a daily basis? Like, are people coming to you and saying, "Hey, I'm just lost," or are you just finding people naturally? I mean, you say that we create our own, our own future and our own existence and who we are, but how do you interact with other folks and help them find the same joy that you've been able to find?
Yeah, one of the ways they can do that is just they can come through my Substack, my
Okay.
newsletter, where I'm writing and teaching all the time, doing videos, doing different things. But at reginaldmartin.substack.com. And but I'm constantly teaching, so people can sign up there, and I'm constantly doing articles. I also have courses in teaching these ideas, so I can get a lot more detail and spend a lot more time with the courses. But I've also developed a business system around the Kemetic spirituality, so the people
Okay.
who want to teach this, I can actually certify them, and then they can get the system and get the ideas. They can even get my content that I produce, my courses and classes, and they can use it inside their coaching and use it as a framework for them. So practitioners, even there, I know that there are preachers that are deconstructing, and they want to preach, but they feel like they have to give up one or the other, and they really don't. So I literally put together what I call Kemetic sermons in a box, where I can teach them the ancient principles to where they don't have to give up what they have been doing. They can still talk in front of the congregation and teach ideas that I feel like are liberating and that will be uplifting,
Mhm.
and but still understand the ideas of Jesus and the Christ, and talk to people using that language, but having a more spiritual, non-dogmatic perspective from it. But my Substack account, that's where people can come through, and then they can just go off in different directions there.
Gotcha. So what's next? What's next for Reginald as you're doing some blogging and you're teaching people and you're coaching and you're helping folks, and you're creating. And the reason I'm asking that, because I know, some of our worlds, we got to set these goals and we have to have these timelines on these goals, and we try, and but if you don't have the right mindset going into it, basically for you, and then I guess how do you
I'm sorry, you were cutting in
how
and
do you
out of there.
believe
I
you'll
heard
achieve
how do
whatever it
you.
is that comes next?
So I heard you were cutting in and out there again, but I think I heard what do I do? Basically, what am I doing next? Okay, and this is what I'll say to that, Dr. B, is that I'm doing everything that I want to do in my life right now. So for me, it is about learning to enjoy this moment, learning and live in that moment, and finding the joy in every moment that I can. Okay, so it's living. How do I say? I'm living life by putting together moment after moment after moment of joyousness. That's the way I like to try to look at it. So every day, when I'm teaching and coaching and writing, um, I don't that my goal is to live life joyfully and being who I am. That's it,
Hmm.
all day, every day, and living life on my terms. That brings me the most joy because I go to bed when I get tired. I wake up when I'm rested. I don't go. I haven't used an alarm clock in 5 years. you know, so that's my joy. So you're talking about a journey to freedom. That's freedom to me. Is just being able to live life on your terms and live it the way you want to live it.
Oh man, that is so neat. What for somebody who's just searching, somebody who is feels like they're confused, like you did, where you're back and forth. What advice would you give them, or maybe like what is the first thing that they should start reading or connecting with to really begin to understand? I guess the confusion that they're having and being able to get some clarity.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I would definitely say, come through to my Substack for one. There is right now, I don't see a lot of people that are in the deconstruction space. There are the danger that I've seen is that sometimes people are trying to deconstruct others, but they're staying in that same frame. I
Mm,
believe if you
mhm.
stay in that frame that I'm a born sinner and I'm broken, then you're automatically stuck. You're going to meet something that's going to be stuck. So when you're, doing your
Yeah.
business or trying to get something started, but I do my best to help people to transition through that with the stuff that I do. What I do is very unique, in this space. So nobody has created what I've created, and I'm trying to think of books that might help people, but I was trying to think of ones that I've read that were doing something that I'm doing, and there's just not much out there that I can think about. But they definitely need to understand that they're not broken. Those kind of ideas.
Mhm.
Start to examine that stuff.
Good. Well, thank you, Ray. This has been such a great conversation. I hope we get to talk some more at some point because I've so thoroughly enjoyed it and learned and grown. And oh my gosh, as we all try to, I guess, do better in life and to make sure that we're having that joy you have. When I think about like the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, and are we all pursuing this happiness? And we turn over one stone and go, oh, that wasn't it. Then we turn over another stone and go, oh, that wasn't it. And it's so refreshing to see somebody said, yeah, I turned over some stones, but that's it. I've got it. It makes sense. And now there's nothing I wouldn't change about my life. And that's so precious. And I hope if you've listened to this is your first podcast, that you go back and you'll listen to it and you'll examine it and you will see what I'm seeing and you will feel what I'm feeling. Just the joy in whether it's in his heart or whatever, if it's in his mind. But there is joy in Reginald Martin. And I'm so enjoying having this conversation with him. And so, I would just say if this is your first time and this you've enjoyed this, go ahead and hit the notifications. We have so many of these incredible COD podcasts with successful men who are doing exactly what they love to do in life and making it work. And if you're not finding somebody through all of these that is helping you, that's because you're not looking, you're not searching. You've already decided that it won't work. But here's what I know: if you're listening to this, you're searching and you're looking. So please go to his website. Please look at our Substack, not the website. Go to Substack. Make sure you look and study some of the things he's telling you, because if we are pursuing joy, it's one way to find it. And so again, Reginald, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. Like I said, I can't wait to spend more time with you as we continue to grow and find some connections. I know when I come to Dallas, I'm going to look you up and we're going to go to dinner or something. We're going to have some fun
Sounds good.
and eat some stuff, and that'll be great. So,
hey, I'd love it, Dr. B. Thank you for having me on.
Cool. We love it. Well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. This is going to be the first day of the rest of your life. I love to say that to people because it always is, because, you have the ability to create your own destiny. And Reginald just told you exactly where to start to be able to do it. All right. So we'll talk to you guys later. Have an amazing